Say Sing, Lord, you are good. Say, come on right here. People from every nation. Come on, from generation. Hey, let me worship you. Oh, hallelujah. Come on, we worship you for who you are. Come on, one more time, say it. We worship you. Hallelujah. Yeah, we worship you for who you are. Come on, say it. For who you are. Last time, for who you are. Tell them, say, you are good. Now come on, if you're going to be good, open up your mouth all over the house and make a joyful noise. Hallelujah.
Oh, don't stop praising. Oh, don't stop praising him. Somebody said he's good all the time.
This is the day that the Lord hath made. Let us rejoice and let us be glad in it. Welcome to our Biblecast. So happy to have you here with us. Those who've tuned in, whether it's Apple TV, Roku, Twitch, Amazon, Fire TV, YouTube, Facebook, various websites, however you're viewing, thank you for your viewership today. And if this is your first time and you're watching through a platform that will allow you to leave us a message, I want you to type the number 1 in the virtual chat. So I hope Global Family will know this is your first time viewing and they can appropriately welcome you to our ministry. We're excited that you're here today. So subscribe, like, comment, tag somebody, share this with us. It's going to be a great, great time today. We have a little different setup today. We have a duo today. I'm excited that we're going to be doing this tag team Bible study today. It's pretty cool today. We got not Batman and Robin, not Bunny and Clyde, not Michael and Scotty, or even Shaq and Kobe. Today we have Dewey and Marquise. So happy to have him with us, our intern. He's been with us all summer and excited about him being here. Just finished his freshman year at Morehouse, 18 years of age, getting ready to be a rising sophomore. How's it been, man of God?
It's been pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. I'm happy to be here, and I'm happy to be a part of this lesson.
Glad you're here with us. You know, we've been trying to have Bible studies on Sundays, and then come back and continue the conversation on Wednesdays this summer. And so you preached a message to our Hope Global family on Sunday that was so powerful. Mm-hmm. And I said, you know what? Well, why not include him as a part of the conversation? Since you gave the message and we both can talk about it. So we have an outline ready for you. If you go to that Bible study link right there on the website, you can actually click this Bible study outline. You can download it, and I want somebody to get it and put it in the chat so you can follow along with us. We've been talking about the summer shift, and you've been shifting with us the whole summer as we shifted from the cathedral to the theater, and you helped us in that regard. And how you think it's gone so far?
Well, it's going great. The energy, the people, the messages, the music, everything has been great. It's been major, and it's been enjoyable. And I look forward to church every week.
Man, it's been exciting. It's the cathedral is a beautiful place, and we're excited about it. But that theater, the intimacy, the community, the energy, as you said, it's been explosive. I'm afraid to sleep late on Saturday because I don't want to miss Sunday morning. So I'm glad you're here with us. You've been a blessing to us. You and Anthony Mitchell, who's a rising senior at Clark Atlanta. You've been with us all summer, and you guys have done an amazing job. Just the energy you brought, both of you brought to the church, creativity, and so we're glad you're here, and we're thankful. So as you're watching, please subscribe, like, comment, share. It's going to be a great, great time. We're going to continue that theme of shifting. I thought it was just going to be for the month of June, and the shift was just going to be something that dealt with moving from the cathedral to the theater. But it's been more than that. I've seen people's lives shifts, and people have looked beyond just the geographical. What do you think? How do you feel the shift that has impacted people?
I think it's impacted people in a major way, even beyond just the theater. I think people they've been able to, get different perspective when it comes to shifts, even in their own lives. You know what I'm saying? And have a better understanding, and even just you preaching, Dr. Connor, she preached a message, and then me, even as a preaching Sunday, it helped me to dig deep into different shifts in life and shifts we see in the Bible. You know what I'm saying? So the people has gotten to even get different preaching perspectives of shifts, and just overall, we've been able to have a deeper understanding of shifts in life.
I completely concur. I mean, that's 3 different preachers on Sundays and 3 different Bible studies. Pastor Connor preached and taught Bible study about the shifts, and I didn't know it was going to be this intense and be this long, but I feel God is speaking to us through this. And one of the things I want to do, I wanted to kind of engage some theology in this series, and we've been talking about, of course, God being immutable, and not subject to change, immutability of God. God says in Malachi 3:6, I am the Lord and I change not. And I want to get that because in this world, so much is evolving. So I want to put that out there. We've been talking about the essence of God versus the energies of God, who God is, and then how God operates, being 2 different things, and that we don't confuse those two different things. Sunday, your message was from the book of Genesis, and you talked about the life of Joseph and how those shifts affect, you got to the Joseph's life and the shifts that he went through, but you also talked through various shifts that we all go through. I thought your story that you told to introduce the message was kind of telling about your trip to South Carolina and how you got that illumination, that revelation for the introduction. Can you talk about that a little bit? I think it was a powerful way to introduce that sermon.
Yeah. So, when I was traveling, anything that I do, I always find a sermon.
Absolutely.
I think that's just a thing. I mean,
Absolutely.
I was at Top Golf one time with my brothers, and I'm standing, getting ready to hit the ball, and a message came up on the screen about, you not being able to move forward until you finish reviewing that play. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And you just find sermons and everything.
You're a preacher.
So when
that's what a real preacher does.
When I got on that bus, and this is my first time riding a Greyhound, and I was paying attention, of course, to my environment. There wasn't that many people on the bus, and we got on the bus in a not so good area. I'd never done this before, and just hearing the young woman say to her child, "We just have to get through this." That did something to me. You know what I'm saying? To relay that message to your child, you know what I'm saying? And a lot of times when hearing those things at a young age, they resonate with us as we get older. And I began to think about even how that child will years later think about how in a hard situation or in a situation that didn't feel so good, his mom told them, "We just have to get through this."
And it's funny that you said that because they were shifting. Transitioning from one place to the next, and it's uncomfortable.
Right.
But we're shifting.
Right.
And even though it's uncomfortable, you got to endure during the shift.
Yeah. Yeah. And she's even relaying that message to her child. She shows us how shift takes strength.
And that's something.
How much strength it took for her to say that to her child. And find positive in a situation that he was conveying to her didn't feel so good for him.
Now you know what I loved about the sermon, and I missed it. I wasn't here to hear it all in person. But what I loved about it, appreciated about it, was in my heart, and you and I hadn't talked about this, but in my heart, one of the things that I've seen that we've unintentionally done, we tend to have a tendency to equate shift, transition, and seasons to positivity, to promotion, to money, to relationships. The shift, there's a tendency to believe that positivity is attached to it. And I love the angle you took, even with your story you just told us, or reminded us of, regurgitated, because that shift for that couple and for you just said, not the best area. Greyhound, I haven't been on Greyhound in a long time. And Greyhound was uncomfortable, in some spots 30 years ago when I took Greyhound. So, but you were shifting. And I appreciated that, the realness of letting people know that just because you're shifting doesn't mean it's going to be wonderful.
Right.
And I think preachers, we have to do a better job of showing balance, that every shift, every transition, every promotion
Right.
is not going to be wonderful. What are your
Right.
thoughts about that?
Look, I think that's why the songwriter said, look, a shift is a transition. And the songwriter told us that time is filled with sort of transition.
Yeah.
He didn't say good transitions all the time. He didn't say bad transitions all the time. As a matter of fact, I learned that song at a funeral.
Wow. Isn't that something?
I learned that song. I first heard that song and it impacted me at a funeral.
Swift transitions.
Swift transition.
Yeah.
But he gives us a solution to even through every transition that we go through.
Yeah.
When he said, build your hopes on, Jenny Wilson, she said,
Yeah.
build your hopes on things eternal.
Yeah.
And hold to God's unchanging hand. And that affirms us, as it affirms us today, you know, that even in shifts that are uncomfortable and aren't good and don't feel comfortable, if you build your hopes on things eternal, which means building your hopes on things that you cannot see right now.
Yeah. Isn't that something? Yeah. And I think that's a good word, because some shifts will be positive. Some shifts will bring happiness. Some shifts will bring the raise or the promotion or the house or the relationship or the car. Some shifts will. But don't make the mistake of believing that every shift is going to be easy. I think that's the thing we've not done a good job on. And so you talked about some of the shifts that you've seen, some of the things that are happening presently. You talked about the Supreme Court. You talked about the governor of Florida and a few other things. You want to just kind of regurgitate those things for a moment?
Yeah. Well, most recently, you know, you've seen a story on the news about Carly Russell.
Yeah.
And originally we thought she went missing, was kidnapped there in Alabama. And based on articles that were read, she ended up returning home. And we ended up finding out that she wasn't kidnapped. It was all a hoax. And I found that so many people were making jokes about that. You know what I'm saying? They thought that it was funny. You know what I'm saying? But at the end of the day, when I started to really reflect and dig deep, and I even thought about the Tabitha's house here. And yesterday I went to see the movie Sounds of Freedom about human trafficking and kidnappings. It's just like so many people deal with those things that don't get any attention. Right. There's so many names that we don't hear. Absolutely. And then even us as an African-American community, we prayed and we fought and we shared this, you know, with fear in our hearts. You know, communities, you know, church communities, faith communities came together only for us to find out that we weren't being taken seriously. You know what I'm saying? Right. But there's so many who are in serious situations, even as we speak, you know what I'm saying, that don't get any attention. And we find that she manipulated the system. You know what I'm saying? But even in that, I was, you know, letting the people know we just have to get through this. You know?
We got to get through it. I mean, the reality is there are a lot of African-American women, brown, and women, period, but African-American and brown women don't get the same representation in the media. And so things like this can affect in a negative way. Right. You know, and so you're right, but it happened. I think some mental illness may be involved there, but we got to get through it. You know, and that's a good place. Whether it be the governor of Florida, whether it be the Supreme Court system rolling back affirmative action, as you said on Sunday, those things we got to get through.
We got to get through it. But it's also important, I believe, that even as there's shifts that take place in our world, that we make sure we're aware. And that's why I wanted to make sure I highlighted those things, because when those things happen, we hurt as a people, as a community, as a country. You know what I'm saying? Right. And not only do we go through shifts in our individual lives, but those are shifts that we deal with together. So even as we go through them together, it's important that we come together and we make sure we know, and we make sure we fight, and we make sure we stand up for one another in those circumstances, even when going through.
Yeah, that's so powerful. You know, you segue from that, and I think we're going to talk about this because this is where it all gets very, very powerful. Knowing that whether the shift is swift, I talked about sudden shifts swift transitions, and how Joseph had to deal with the shifts of life. And so we're going to talk about that today. And I want you to make sure you subscribe, like, comment, share, tag somebody, because this is going to be very powerful. It's going to be a daily dose of hope for somebody who's watching. So what led you to Joseph in that message Sunday?
Um, Joseph, I've been studying Joseph for a long time. You know what I'm saying? And one day I actually was having a conversation with Dr. Carter, and she was expressing to me how you find that one story or one passage in the Bible that you can relate to and that you can preach from so many different perspectives.
Yeah.
And that's been Joseph for me. You know
Wow.
what I'm saying?
Wow.
Joseph has been I've found a sermon, so many different sermons in Joseph. I've preached
Wow.
what I preach Sunday. I preach there's a method to God's providence from Joseph.
Wow.
There's been so many different sermons. So when I was praying to God about what to preach Sunday, along with some things I was going through in my personal life, God showed me three different points in Joseph that I had never preached before. And when he gave it to me, I said, let me dig deep into this.
So let's talk about shifts for Joseph. What, in your estimation, what does a shift, or what did the shift look like for Joseph? Or did he have various shifts?
I think Joseph had various shifts. He shifted locations a lot. He shifted, people he was surrounded by. He dealt with many different shifts. He shifted locations, he was surrounded by, but his circumstances shifted, and they shifted rapidly. You know what I'm saying? In many different ways. But not only did he shift, in a situation, but he also shifted emotionally, I believe. I believe he shifted a lot of ways emotionally, traumatically. You get what I'm saying? And I think they're great takeaways that I saw, and that's what led me to preach it, that we can take many shifts we can take from him.
I want to just kind of take a cursory glimpse back to the beginning of his life because you dealt with Genesis 50. But if you go to the first time we really see him in Genesis 37, I think one of the things that I like about Joseph is he had a vision for shift before he saw manifestation of it. I think it's just a good point that, he had a dream about his brothers. I mean, basically, the essence, his brothers bowing to him.
Mm-hmm.
And long before that ever materialized, he saw it. And I think there are people who are watching, I'm speaking shift here. I want to speak in terms of vision. What do you believe is next for you? A lot of people won't receive a shift if you don't envision it. When I think about your life coming here from New Jersey to Morehouse, when nothing about your journey was going to bring you to Morehouse.
Right.
But you saw a vision.
Right. For
Morehouse.
Right.
Rather than Princeton or somewhere in Jersey.
Right.
And then now you're walking in what you saw. You want to talk about that? Because I think it's important, just as an aside, because I want to help people get vision and clarity for their lives. And we got 5 months left in this year. What are you seeing? What's the next step? If you want something to shift in a positive direction, what are you doing about it now to make that process?
Right. And yeah, that's very important. I mean, like you said, many people don't know, but I didn't see Morehouse in my journey.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And actually, Morehouse was everything that people felt, those that are around me felt wasn't for me. Morehouse, as we all know, HBCUs are expensive. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And it was one conversation that shifted my whole perspective. But it shifted my perspective 4 days before I couldn't even apply to Morehouse anymore.
Wow.
I applied to Morehouse 4 days before the deadline.
Wow.
January 26th, I applied. February 1st was the deadline, but I got in February 15th. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
And now before January 26th, I had only applied to New Jersey schools.
Wow.
Because I knew being in New Jersey, because of the circumstance I was in, foster care and things like that, I would get my school paid for.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, but one conversation shifted my perspective, shifted a decision, which shifted the whole trajectory. I wouldn't be sitting here doing this with you today if I didn't come to Morehouse College.
And that's something. So think about that. So think about the power of one conversation. And we're gonna get to. I just want to talk about that because something had to make Joseph see it. One conversation. And 13, 14 years later, it manifested. So here you are now in August of 2023 after applying January 26th of 2022.
And I think that's it's interesting because you said one conversation.
Yeah.
Both of the conversations me and Joseph had were negative.
Wow.
The conversation that Joseph had with his brothers and even his father, they told him, "Are you crazy?
Yeah.
What you're seeing is crazy."
Right.
When I had that, and that's deep that you say that, because when I had that conversation about going to Morehouse, you know what people said to me? Are you crazy?
Lord Jesus.
So then that leads me to ask, what happens when the shift in your perspective, other people don't see it?
You know, it's funny you said that because if you're not strong enough in what you saw, you could very easily be talked out of it. Because it's easy for you to do school in Jersey
when you get it for free.
Yeah.
And that goes to what we was talking about earlier with the young woman on the a bus, how shifts take strength.
Ain't that something?
Because it took strength for Joseph to stand firm in what he saw,
right,
when other people didn't see it.
You know, it's one thing about Joseph that I don't like, or I'm not gonna say I don't like. It's a bit of constructive criticism. When you read the story, Joseph had several dreams and was hated by his brothers. We're gonna talk about that in a minute. Gonna come back to that in a minute because it was a powerful point you made Sunday. I don't want to get into it prematurely, but he told his brothers a dream. They hated him. Had another dream. Came back and told it to him again about them inevitably bowing to him. That was the essence of it. And they hated him the more. A part of my challenge with Joseph is, and I know it could be youth, but I wonder, did he handle with wisdom? I know God works out for our good, but sometimes you can exacerbate a situation that's already negative. You know, and I know God is sovereign, but I think sometimes we have to be wise enough to know who we're sharing our dreams with, especially when you know that's a challenge.
Right.
I don't know if he wanted to be beloved by them. You know, he knew his father loved him or whatever. But if somebody already hates you,
right.
I don't know if I need to continue to have those conversations. You and I have been talking about this year as well, about how do you protect your emotions when you're trying to converse with somebody,
right, that
you know they mean you no good in the first place.
Right.
You know, what have you learned, you know, since you've shifted here for college, doing interpersonal relationships, particularly at Morehouse, because Morehouse, you can tell a Morehouse man, but you can't tell him much. So how's that been, you know, in terms of you having to deal with your brothers in your own shifts about things God doing in your life? How have you dealt with that? Because that can be problematic. I think it can be helpful for people who are watching as well.
And it's not always easy being around people, like I said, who don't see what you see, who try to deter you from your own destiny. And I think the hard part is, and this might answer what you were saying, I think the hard part is when you have to deal and decipher what to and what not to say, who people you didn't choose to place in your life.
My God.
These, by assumption, would be the closest people to you. And I said this on Sunday, that Joseph was the youngest of all his brothers. As a younger brother, it's expected, it's a natural expectation to wish or to expect our older brothers to protect us. You know what I'm saying? And I think oftentimes we have natural expectations of people who we didn't place in our lives. Natural expectations for my older brothers to protect me. Natural expectations from my parents to do right by me. We have all these natural expectations. But what happens when those expectations are failed and you now have to decipher and decide how you deal with people who you didn't choose? When you have a friend come into your life and they do you wrong, you can stop being friends.
That's your choice. That's your choice. You made that decision.
I made this, but what happens when the decision wasn't yours? What happens when you didn't choose that boss?
Right.
You need that job.
Yes.
But you didn't choose that boss.
Yes.
So now you have to decide and decipher, how do I handle this person? How do I, and I think that's the hardest part, especially when you love them.
And you're right. He had 10 older brothers, and he was amongst the youngest, like the 11th one. I think we're 12 and all. He was
right before Benjamin.
Yeah, and I think the problem is, the challenge there is, if you can't talk to your 10 older brothers, who can you talk to? I think the other piece is, I wonder, was he aware of their hatred? And I wonder if because could it be that he told him the second dream because he wasn't discerning
Right.
to know how they felt about him. You can be around people that
Mm.
you think we're cool because we're brothers.
Mm.
We can be ministry brothers.
Right.
We're brothers in ministry. We're brothers in school.
Mm.
And we think we got the same goals.
Right.
You're a preacher, I'm a preacher. We both chaplain assistants. We're both
Right.
in the organization. We both go to the convention together.
Right.
We're in New Empire, a general missionary convention together.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking I'm talking to my brothers about what God is showing me.
But really, I'm handing them the knife to stab.
Isn't that amazing?
Mm.
And I know God works everything out for good, but I
Mm.
wonder how many of us have ended up hurting ourselves, perhaps,
Mm.
in ways that we didn't necessarily have to go through because
Right.
we shared with
Too
people,
much information.
too much information for people.
Yeah.
But you're right. He didn't choose his family. So the thing for me is God gave him a vision of his inevitable shift.
Mm.
When his brothers would one day bow, he would be the leader. The problem is his brothers shifted.
Mm.
So you talked about when people shift.
Mm.
Really, his brothers shifted before he got his shift.
Mm.
So you want to elaborate on that?
Yeah, so I went into that because although we may have expectations, we can't control how other people move.
Mm.
We can't control how other people act.
Mm.
And I think that's why I harped on that first point. God has your back even when people shift.
Mm.
Like you said, God never changes. His energy may change, but he remains the same. And it's important that sometimes when people shift in your life, it can get very discouraging, especially when you didn't expect them to. You didn't expect them to switch up on you. You didn't expect them to do certain things toward you. And that traumatic experience, that's where depression comes from, anxiety comes from. And I felt like some people who were there that morning needed to hear that even when other people shift, God still has your back, because oftentimes when other people shift, and I also talked about this, I said when others shift, they shift on us, and then we begin to shift on ourselves.
My God.
And that's what I went into Sunday. I talked about how some people here, you need to know that God had your back through other people shifting. But you also need to know that you need to get your head out the bleachers and get back in the game, because you shifted on yourself based on how other people have treated you.
Lord have mercy. It's so powerful when you preach that, because the reality is God's desire to shift Joseph didn't change.
Mm.
His brother shifting had no bearing on God's inevitable plan to shift him.
Mm.
So the question is, if God's shift for you is coming, even when your brothers shift, the only thing that can throw it off is if you shift on yourself.
Mm. That's true.
You know what I mean? Because like you said, if you got your head in the bleachers, so Joseph has to respond a certain way in order for him to walk step in step with what God wants to do in his life. And but it's painful when your brothers really thought about killing you.
Right. Yeah.
And there are people today, who don't even know why they treat you like they treat you. They don't really realize there's something on your life
Right.
that brings about a desire for them to dominate you and control you. And you've gone through bullying before when you were in school because you were different.
Right.
And because you wouldn't bow, because you could sing, because you were playing the piano from brothers.
Right. That's true.
Who didn't even realize
Right.
when you're 13, 14,
Right.
why they were mishandling you. And you may not even have seen at that moment.
Right.
What do you say to the person who's having to deal with those types of, situations on a job or in a relationship where they're being mishandled? And something based upon something that they didn't do.
I'll say this, and I could publicly speak about this because, it's happened. But when I got bullied, I ended up getting, kicked in the head and having to go to the hospital and things like that. And it ended up, was a court case and all that like that. And I remember so vividly that the lawyers came to my apartment and they asked me what I wanted to do, press charges, try to, do that things. And I told them, I don't want to do any of that.
Wow.
I said, I don't want to do any of that. God is my witness, and those people, the lawyers, are my witness.
Wow.
This was on the news and everything. I told them I don't want to do any of that. And I never told them why. And even at that moment, I didn't understand why I felt like that. I said, I would rather that person, get help because of what he did to me, rather than he sit in a jail cell and that jail cell can make him worse.
My God.
Without any help.
At 14.
At 14. And I'm not going to lie, I don't know why I was saying it then. But standing from where I am now, and I'm going a little further into the sermon.
That's fine.
That I talked about, God has your back even through your trauma. A lot of times, what people do to you really has nothing to do with you, but has everything to do with the trauma that they've experienced. And that is not making excuses for them.
Right.
But that's when you have a better understanding of why you're being dealt with in an improper way, it helps you to progress and continue to work on you so you don't become that to somebody else.
Let me ask you this. Are you saying to me that Joseph's brothers' treatment of him could have very well had to do with the trauma that they had felt?
I believe Joseph's brothers had trauma.
Yeah, talk about that.
And I believe they had trauma because the Bible talks about how Joseph was one of his father's favorite children.
Yeah.
One translation even says that Jacob loved Joseph more than he loved any of the other children.
Yes.
And I posed this question on Sunday. How would you feel if your parents didn't? And I'm pretty sure there's people out there that even deal with this.
Yes, absolutely.
How would you feel if your parents loved on one of your other siblings verbally, materialistically, emotionally, showed more love to another child more than they showed it to all of you equally? And I believe, I even posed this, that it could have been Joseph's brother's trauma from feeling loveless, from feeling insecure. They were all young, from feeling like they may not have been good enough.
In the same house.
In the same house. They may have felt that way, that caused them to treat Joseph the way they did. Yeah. That maybe what they did to Joseph had nothing to do with them hating Joseph, but had everything to do with Joseph having something they didn't get.
My God, the coat of many colors and a father's love. And what your point was, even when you were bullied, the mature you now looks back and realizes that kid's treatment of you probably had nothing to do with you.
Probably had nothing to do with me. Because honestly, when I look back, and I was talking about this with somebody the other day, I talked about how I would try to befriend him just so he wouldn't bully me. I didn't do anything to him. Wow. When I look back, I didn't say things to him that made him. He genuinely was satisfied by how he treated me, because whatever I had or whatever I was doing or whatever it was, he was yearning for something he wasn't getting. Wow. So this negative was satisfying the positive that he wanted.
That's so heavy, and the reality. That's why I said with Joseph, I didn't know what Joseph felt. You were more wise now, and you guys about the same age. You know, you saw this guy had issues. I wonder if Joseph saw his brother's hatred, or if he, in his immaturity, because one writer does say that in his immaturity, he knows they hate him, but can't do anything about it. So he continued to, perhaps in an immature way, keep it before them to exacerbate their pain. But you were trying to dissolve a person's pain. And the point is, you don't have to do anything for somebody to hate you.
Right.
Yeah. And so when there's been trauma, we talk about Joseph's inevitable trauma. But we don't talk about the trauma that perhaps his brothers endured.
Right.
And I think when you do that, when you start looking at somebody, it's funny you said that, because growing up, my father and my siblings and I didn't have the closest relationship with our dad. And it took me a long time to realize that my father was a kid when he had kids. You know, in his early 20s, he had 3 kids.
Mm.
So it's hard to expect a boy to be a man.
Right.
You know, my mother was 13, 14 when she had my sister. You know, they were in high school. So can you really expect maturity out of somebody? And we all on Similac and Isomil at the same time.
Right.
And so the certain level of trauma to understand what they have gone through,
Right.
to get a better understanding that if you're dealing with somebody who's not whole themselves,
Right.
is it fair for you to expect wholeness from somebody
Right.
who's not whole? And learn how to relieve them of that versus always seeing ourselves as the victims of trauma. To not realize that those who traumatize
Right.
could have been traumatized themselves.
Right.
I think is an excellent point.
Yeah.
And so Joseph now is thrown in the pit.
Mm.
That's a shift of location.
Yep.
And then he goes to Potiphar's house, you know, and he changes locations, changed scenery.
Yep.
And you talked about that. And it's funny but the Lord was still with him.
Right.
In every place.
God still had his back.
God, even in the shifts. Potiphar's wife lies on him.
Yep.
So he has to go through another shift. And this is downward. But God favors him everywhere he went. And then you kept moving through the message. And then you get to the point of overflow.
Mm.
That Joseph, you talk about having your own back.
Mm.
I want you to hit on that just a little bit more because I think it's so important.
Well, I talked about having your own back still under that point about God has your back even through your trauma.
Yeah.
And I talked about how, I posed the question, how many people have you hurt because of the trauma that you've experienced?
Mm.
How many people have hurt you because of the trauma that they've experienced?
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And one thing I can tell you for sure, that when you've experienced trauma in your childhood,
Yeah.
if it don't show up anywhere else, it will show up in your relationships.
Lord have mercy.
And I dug deep into how a lot of times we don't address our trauma and we allow our trauma to matriculate and it becomes a part of us. And I remember you preaching a sermon when we were in Dallas, and you talked about how we get to a point in our lives where we say comments like, it is what it is.
Yeah.
What's going to be, what's going to be.
Yeah.
And when we allow our trauma to matriculate, we begin to look at ourselves in the mirror and say, it is what it is. And we almost get to a point where we stop growing.
Have mercy.
We stop maturing. And the point I was trying to get across is after a while, and I was taught this even as a young age, before you're the age of 18, you may go to juvie or you may even get off.
Right.
But after the age of 18, you are now responsible for yourself.
My God.
You are now responsible. You hit somebody, you going to jail.
Absolutely.
Nobody's going to pat you on the back and say, it's okay.
Right.
That's same with your trauma. Once you get a certain age, it is your job to be able to sit with yourself, look in the mirror, no longer self-medicate with weed or self-medicate with alcohol or, self-medicate to escape from that trauma. You must sit with yourself. Some of us self-medicate with anger, and we self-medicate with depression. You know what I'm saying? Self-medicate is the wrong word. Not self-medicate, but those things begin to take over because we haven't dealt with what is the root to that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And we have to get to a point where we have our own back. And we go to therapy and it's not easy.
Right.
I'm not saying that. I've been through the process, and even I'm forever going through that process of evolving and going to therapy and healing from things that I've been through. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's important that we have our own back.
Right.
And in having our own back, we go through and do those hard things.
Yeah.
I would rather be in a moment of be uncomfortable for a moment.
Yeah.
Than be traumatized for a lifetime.
Have mercy.
You get what I'm saying?
Lord Jesus.
I'd rather sit there and cry and confront those things. You know what I'm saying? And it is uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But I'd rather be uncomfortable so I can make those people who I love comfortable.
It's deep that you said that because people don't realize it. If you were in a manipulative situation as a child, if you were manipulated, by teachers, by parents, by the siblings by whomever, somebody that you trusted, it is highly probable that those are your coping mechanisms, and you will eventually become the manipulator.
Right.
And not even know it, because you've been carrying that baggage for so long, but that's such an environmental factor on that. And until you sit with it,
Right.
and have people, because you now had some deep conversations to how do you put the mirror up to have your own back. And I think that's showing up, like you said,
Right.
showing up to do the hard work to say, okay, this is what I've gone through. This is what I've been through. And so Joseph, what I love about him, you don't see the trauma coming out of him. In the pit, in Potiphar's house, don't see any trauma. Not coming out of him. Goes to prison. He's there interpreting dreams of the butler, the baker, and years later, one of them have a dream. Now he comes to Pharaoh's palace, and you see no trauma.
Right.
You see him showing up, right? But then he finally meets his brothers. They come to get an allotment portion with their dad. But then you said something that was so powerful, Sunday, when you closed. In that 50th chapter, I think it was the 14th verse, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, about Joseph weeping.
Yeah. Joseph. Joseph's brothers feel that the only reason they've got off is because of Jacob, which is Joseph's father.
Right.
And that's even deep in itself, because the very person who they could have felt didn't love them was the person they felt that at this point was protecting them from judgment.
And that's something.
So in Genesis chapter 50 verses 14, we start to read about how Jacob, Joseph's father, is now dead.
Right.
And how Joseph's brothers begin to get scared that Joseph will then retaliate against them for what they did to him. And would you believe me if I told you that I believe Joseph's brothers writing this letter to Joseph was even them still being manipulative?
Wow. Yeah, I can see it.
They were still being manipulative.
Yeah.
Because all they cared about was being I don't believe they could have, they might not have been, but based on what I've read and how I read it, it seemed like manipulation.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get off.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
We're going to write you this letter because our dad is dead and you the second in command of Egypt, and we know you won't get back.
Exactly.
Well, you're going to get us back, and we're writing this letter to let you know dad is dead. Don't come and get us. Don't kill us. Not because we have a desire to be relational with you, but because we don't want you to have revenge.
Not only that, they said in the letter that their dad told them to write it.
Exactly. And we have no evidence where that took place. And
my question would be, this is why I say it's manipulation. Why didn't they do it while their dad was there?
Absolutely. Right. Why do you wait until he dies before you send the letter?
I wonder if their dad even knew what they did to Joseph.
Now that's a good point.
Or to the extent that they did it.
That's a good point.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But when Joseph reads the letter, it was interesting to me that Joseph didn't get angry.
Yeah.
He didn't say, "Get out my face."
Yeah.
He didn't do any of that. He wept.
Well, and you talked about that weeping son. That's the first time we see that type of emotional, deep response. What did that weeping mean to you?
It meant so much to me because, and this is where my personal experience kind of connected.
Yeah.
Going through so many things at a young age, people would think me being at Morehouse and me, even being at the church is me on my mountaintop.
Yeah.
And it very much can be. But nobody knows that even on the mountaintop, there are still times that I weep because of things I had to go through while I was in the valley.
That you're still going through.
That I'm still going through. And I think that's that stood out to me, that Joseph people would consider him being ruler over Egypt, the mountaintop.
Yeah.
He's at the top.
Yeah.
He's running stuff.
Yeah.
But still we see him weeping because of what he had to deal with, who hurt him, who didn't stick with him in the valley, who put him in the valley. And I felt like that was that many people needed to hear that. Many people there, I know there was, I prayed to God about it, who may have been on the mountaintop may have made it out of certain situations, may have made it out of certain circumstances, but they were still weeping because of what they had to go through while they were in the valley.
And the fact and the possibility that Joseph may have known that after all the hurt these guys caused me, even though God used it for his glory, you guys have still been trifling and manipulative. I'm at this point, and after all this, I still can't trust you. And my dad's not here. You mentioned earlier about finally getting to the place and the people that you want to be there with you can't celebrate with you.
Right.
That's awful. That's awfully painful.
Yeah, I can't imagine. And that's even another perspective to think about. How he didn't have his dad with him. He didn't have the person the Bible says loved him really the most.
Yeah. Yeah.
With him through it all.
Yeah.
And then we see no record of his mom.
Yep.
We don't hear about his mom.
After giving birth to him, she's not mentioned, is she?
She's not mentioned.
Yeah.
Not to say she wasn't there,
Right.
but I'm saying we don't hear about her.
Right.
We don't hear about her being when he became ruler over Egypt. We don't hear about her being there.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So we don't know what Joseph even dealt with that.
That's true.
And now he's lost the person that the Bible says has basically loved him the most.
Yeah.
And now he's left with the people who's hurt him the most.
Lord have mercy. And he's got it. And maybe that's why he weeps. You talked about how even in that, God provided for him a cistern. And we're going to close out. I want you to talk about that cistern, because I think that was a powerful way to offer hope and close that message.
When I originally read the text, some said ditch, some said cistern. And I had never heard anybody preach specifically about that. So I began to research, and I'm like, ditch, cistern. I know what a ditch is, but I'm like, what is a cistern? And I began to really dig deep into what a cistern is, learning that a cistern, when it rains and things like that, a cistern is where the water is stored for later use. And I thought about it. I'm like, Joseph is in the cistern, but there's no water in it. And I even said Sunday, I didn't elaborate on it, but how it's another sermon, how often we feel the situation we're in is the worst, but really still, God is still protecting us from what could be worse, because there could have been water in that cistern. Joseph could have drowned in that cistern, but I felt there was significance that God placed him in a place where overflow would be. And I thought about it, and I thought about it. And I thought about it, and I said...
From the very beginning.
The
ditch, the cistern.
This is the first place he was placed.
In a cistern, in the ditch.
In a cistern. And I said, could it be that God was placing Joseph in a place of overflow? That there was significance to where he was. He was being preserved and prepared for later use. Because we see he's in the cistern, but the Bible doesn't tell us what's going on in the cistern. We don't hear what Joseph's saying in the cistern. They don't tell us what he's thinking. And I thought, why don't you as people, why don't we insert our own scenario into that? And I call it the cistern stage of life. The place nobody really knows about, that dark place. I even had said, perhaps Joseph even tried to cry out, but the very place he was in, the very circumstances he dealt with, silenced him. In that dark place. And I believe Joseph, and I told the people, and I encouraged them that, and even encouraging myself, that this dark place, this place that's not comfortable, this place that you didn't choose to put yourself in, what if it's preserving you, but preparing you for your later use?
Man, you're preaching that is so prophetic. The ditch was prophetic. The pit, the ditch, the cistern.
What happens?
The thing we look at it.
What happens when the ditch is connected to your destiny?
Isn't that something?
And the pit is connected to your palace.
That is so good.
It's true.
And we rebuke the cisterns. We rebuke the pits. But the brothers could have been throwing him prophetically into destiny. You thought you were throwing him in a ditch, but you were throwing him into destiny. What would you say to the people watching right now who are going through shifts, people are shifting on them, and you close out Sunday talking about, you know, being the reassurance and the affirmation that God has their backs? How would you close this lesson out to somebody who's watching, who's going through those shifts with family and the weeping and the uncertainty? What would you say to those who are watching? What's in your heart to share with those who are watching now?
Like I said Sunday, Joseph was in a cistern, but even Jesus, he was on a tree. And the Romans, I even said in my sermon, Joseph's brothers really left him for dead. They didn't want the guilt of killing him themselves. So they left him for dead.
Absolutely.
The Romans left Jesus for dead. God had Joseph's back. God had Jesus's back. So trust that God has your back. And Joseph and Jesus are just two examples of God having your back, and even Jesus, what other people doing to you has nothing to do with you, but has everything to do with their own trauma, but it has to do with where God is trying to take you. So wherever you are, whatever you're dealing with, it's hard. Don't get from what I'm saying that it's easy. Because what Jesus went through wasn't easy either.
My God.
He went to the garden. You know what I'm saying? Joseph was in a ditch, in a cistern. Jesus was on a tree. I don't know where you are right now, but just know that wherever you are, I believe you're being preserved and prepared for later use, and God has your back even through the process.
Listen, family, those who are watching, I don't know who you are, but maybe you're going through those Joseph-like moments, and life has thrown you in a ditch. And I'm telling you, that's where the Lord can find you and prepare and preserve and protect you for later use. But it's so important that you invite the Lord Jesus to come into your life. And if you're here and you want to invite the Lord Jesus to come into your life, I want you to get your phone now, and I want you to text the word salvation to the number. Text that word. Get your phone and text salvation to 201-1351. It's on the screen. 678-201-1351. If you want to unite with this church, whether in person or whether virtually around the world, to be a Hope Global member, type the word connect. Text the word connect to 678-201-1351. And lastly, if you want prayer, our prayer warriors are standing by. Text that word prayer to 678-201-1351. Then lastly, if you want to give today, you were blessed by the message Sunday, and it's been like good meat and making its own gravy in your life, and you want to give. You want to give your tithe or give an offering. The ways you can give on the screen, through text to give or Cash App, Zelle. It's on the screen right now. I want you to give. Let the Lord know that you are receptive and that you're going to walk by faith in this message. My God, man of God, I just want to thank you for blessing the people of God today. And on Sunday, what a word from God. And thank you for the grace with which you have handled your journey and are handling your journey. As a young 18-year-old, you're full of wisdom, and God has given you wisdom and insight, and has such a great plan and call on your life, and being in those cisterns, you've been in them, and God is preserving, protecting, and preparing you for later use. That's a good word, and so I want you to close this out today, and close this Biblecast out today. However you feel it.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank you for this opportunity, and just the opportunity and trusting me, to preach on Sunday and share my convictions with the world. And to anybody out there, just like we prayed on Sunday, let me just pray for you, that, those who are weeping and, in a place where you're still hurting from those things, I speak healing over your life, and I speak that you will be whole again. I'm saying there's a whole you waiting on you, and you just have to put in the work. So God, we thank you for that person that's here watching, and they're struggling, God, and they're maybe even be wondering if you still had their back, God. We thank you because we affirm them and let them know now that you still have their back and that you're still walking with them, God. But we also pray, God, that they will put in the work they have to do to be healthy, to be whole, and be healed, God, because nobody goes through life without dealing with cisterns. Nobody goes through life without encountering trauma. But God, even through that, we know that you're with us and that you provided resources for us to be able to get better, do better, be better, and be whole, God. So we thank you, we bless you, we give you glory because it's already done. In Jesus' name, amen.
Hey, fam, if you didn't miss, if you didn't hear the message Sunday, go to YouTube, go to Facebook. It's on demand. Check it out. Even in the shift, God has your back. The life and the story of Joseph. Hey, Minister Marquise Dukes, he's blessed us in an amazing way. Minister Marquise Dukes Samuels, so glad to have him here with us, and we're thankful that you're here with us. We're going to close now, but always remember this. If you'll be good to God, God will be good to you. Till we meet again, even in the shift, remember, God has your back. We love you. Take care. Peace and blessings.
Crystal, I've been saying we've been saying for the last couple of weeks that it's really hard to believe that it's already back to school time. Like,
that's right.
Can't believe it.
I mean, I know it came so fast, and we want to thank everyone who helped to participate in our back to school weekend.
That's right.
Now, don't forget about tomorrow's 6 a.m. prayer led by our very own Dr. Smith. For more information, just go to the church's website and you'll find everything you need right there. And I just have one question. Why you got on that backpack?
What you mean?
Why do you have on that backpack?
Because it's back to school weekend, and since we decided to dress like we're in private schools anyway, and I only actually went to public school, so I don't really know nothing about that life, but I wanted to look the part.
Okay.
Now leave me alone so I can do my thing, please.
Do your thing.
Now, for all of our new members out there, whether you joined virtually or in person, you can complete your new membership requirements in just one day. All you have to do is sign up for the virtual. That's important.
Don't come here. Virtual.
Spiritual boot camp that's
Yes.
scheduled for Saturday, August 12th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Text the word membership to 678-201-1351. And also know that children ages 6 and up can be registered for a class, especially designed just for them.
That's new. Okay.
That ain't new.
It's not.
No, they do that all the time. You just didn't. It's new to you.
Well,
I knew it.
Anyway, join the men and women of hope for a combined fellowship on Saturday, August 19th at 8 o'clock a.m. in the Hope Center. This will be a session for women and men to speak on what males and females need from each other. That should be interesting. Join us for this time of fellowship and fun discussion with a theme of I have needs.
We all got needs now.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Now, where are all my seasoned saints? Let me hear you. The seasoned saints, make some noise.
Define that.
Crystal, you ain't.
Don't play with me.
You ain't made.
Don't play with
Okay.
me.
Well, we want all the seasoned saints to join. The seasoned saints to all join together on Saturday, August 19th. For a trip to Trilith Studios. You know about Trilith Studios?
I do not.
I don't either. This is an adventure to tour a Trilith Studios film and movie production in Fayette County, Georgia, at a cost of $25 per person. All you have to do is text the word studio to 678-201-1351 to register, or you want to visit the church's website.
Awesome. Okay. The Men of Hope, in collaboration with the Health and Wellness Ministry, will host the Real Talk, Real Men Conversation. This monthly discussion will be facilitated by the African Male Wellness Agency on Thursday, August 24th at 6 o'clock p.m. in the atrium. Now, these conversations will empower men to understand how prevention can provide them with longer life.
That's right.
Yes.
Longer life. I like that. Long life. Now, me and Crystal, we kind of let y'all slip a little bit last month, but y'all remember us talking about the invitation?
Yes, I do.
Some of y'all, let me see a show of hands, because I did this one time and some of y'all weren't telling the truth, I don't think. Let me see a show of hands for everybody, and if you're watching virtually too, you too, for all of those who have invited somebody this year.
You see, he hesitated putting his hand
I was
up.
trying to get their hands up
Okay,
first before.
whatever.
Now, whether you're watching virtually or you're here in person, we want you to remember that we need you to invite someone, all right? So for the rest of this year, we want you to continue to invite people. We in this new vortex situation here, The vortex? The vortex. When I think about the vortex, I think about the Matrix for some reason. But we in the vortex, so you need to invite somebody into this worship experience in the vortex. Let me just say,
Yeah.
Ain't it been something?
It's given.
So make sure that you're inviting people. And also know that if you have any questions or want to know like what's the best ways to do that, then you need to go to our website, because there's a lot of tips and tools that can help you with the conversation. Because some people, a little scared to be inviting people. So if you're scared to invite people, then go to the website. It'll help.
Right.
Also, for all of our visitors, we got a nice booth set up outside for you. We have a special gift just for you when you leave service today. So make sure you check that out before you leave. But if you are visiting, welcome.
Thank you. And all veterans and their families are invited to attend a monthly Veteran Segway on the third Tuesday of each month from 6:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. This meeting will consist of special guests who will share vital information to veterans and their families and fellowship with other veterans. To participate in this virtual meeting, please text the word Segway to 678-201-1351.
And for my virtual family, we have many ways to keep you connected. So if you need prayer, just text the word prayer. If you would like to be saved, text the word salvation. And if you want to become a member of the House of Hope Atlanta so you can dress up in your school clothes on Back to School Sunday, text the word connect to 678-201-1351.
Well, that is our time for today, and we have to go. And apparently, Corey has to go back to class.
Right.
But remember that life with God is better in every way, every day. Be blessed.
Crystal, did you ever attend like a private school or anything like that?
No, I was public school latchkey kid. That's me.
Latchkey kid. Okay.
Yes.
You had to add that in there.
I did, because that's important.
Okay. All right. I mean, I thought you might have went to like a boarding school or something. You kind of got that boarding school, like you don't get. If somebody had said that me and you look like Fred and Daphne
Ooh.
from the Scooby-Doo.
Scooby-Doo?
That's what somebody said. I ain't gonna say who said it, but we gonna get them for saying that. But he did say we look like Fred and Daphne today. I guess we are kind of giving.
A little bit.
Well, we need a Scooby and Velma, huh?
Right.
All right, we gonna go.
Bye. Love y'all.
We shame.